is sleeping in late considered lazy, but going to bed early isn't? Story 1, it's a perception thing. If you wake up early, it is assumed you're being productive with that time. If you stay up late, it is assumed you're doing something unproductive, like watching a film or gaming. It's all a bit silly, really, so long as you're getting everything done that you need to. Who cares? I often work early or late just so I can get stuff done without interruptions. Story 2, the former, is considered indulgence, since it comes before the work. The latter can be considered something of an award for said work, as well as a replacement for sleeping in. Story 3, a bit like people who start early and finish early. Smug bastards used to always give me when I arrived at 9 a.m., "Oh, nice of you to finally join us." I'd get my revenge at 3 p.m. when they'd be leaving by saying something like it's barely lunchtime and you're giving up already. Story 4, it's the perception of it. Going to bed early is seen as planning ahead, whereas sleeping in is seen as being behind. As a night owl, sleeping gets a bad reputation. I go to bed at 6 o'clock a.m. and wake up at around 1 o'clock p.m. or 2 o'clock p.m., 7 or 8 hours, sometimes only 6 hours, and it is still seen as being lazy. Why can't people understand that everyone has different sleep schedules and not everyone can or wants to sleep at night? Story 5, double standards. The same applies to people who work at night. For some reason, sleeping 6 hours during daylight hours is considered sleeping all the time when sleeping 8 hours at night is just a normal amount of sleep. Story 6, it's funny how society can put such a stigma on sleeping in. Yet going to the gym early is seen as a sign of discipline. I think it all comes down to productivity culture. People feel like the earlier you wake up, the more you're accomplishing, when in reality, everyone's body works differently. Sometimes sleep is the most productive thing you can do for yourself, so if you're resting and recharging, you're just doing what you need. Story 7, sleeping, it implies you don't work a normal 9 to 5 or at all. Whereas going to bed early implies you're tired from a hard day's work and also being responsible for an early morning the next day. Story 8, some of us are morning people. Others are evening people. For some reason, we evening people have been trained to feel guilty about our own circadian rhythms. I've spent most of my life dragging myself out of bed to get to work early. Eventually, I realized that this was counterproductive and started to live according to my own bogus rules. I get more done, my output is better, and I feel better. Maybe one day people will understand and accept this as one of many differences between us. In the meantime, find and cherish colleagues who are prepared to accept different lifestyles. Story 9, if you're very productive at night, it is reasonable to say you sleep in, but most people are simply playing with their phones or watch videos at night. Story 10, it's just stupid perception. I don't give a who thinks I'm lazy. I'm getting up when I feel like I want to get up. Sometimes it's noon, sometimes it's earlier. I sleep until I feel like it because it's my life, and you if you want to give me about it. Story 11, so way back when you needed a natural herd inclination for some people to basically be awake all the time. Not the same people, but you wanted someone to keep an eye out for lions and back when we were monkeys. So some of us would stay up late, some would sleep a lot during the day and be up through the night, and some would wake up early because they went to sleep a few hours before everyone else. Fast forwards to industrial England, because it's one of the first countries to industrialize. That's not really a problem. There's no predators and factories need bodies. There's also gas lighting being installed everywhere that can afford it. Now it doesn't matter if your natural inclination is to wake up early or go to sleep late. The factory starts running at 8 a.m. and you need to be ready for work or you don't get paid. The factory owner wants it running from 8 a.m. because that's when the sun comes up and he can rely on natural light rather than gas lamps to keep profits coming in. So all those late-nighters are now suffering because Mr. Factory Owner won't pay them if they turn up an hour late. Story 12 is a night owl myself. I must admit that I find it difficult to get myself to go to bed early and easy to stay in bed and sleep more after waking up. So while the world is perhaps unfairly biased against night owls, I do understand the logic. Going to bed is a deliberate transition into the next step. So doing it early seems like getting a jump on things. Staying in bed late into the feels in a sense like failing to transition into the next step in a timely manner. Story 13, it's stupid. I sleep 6 hours a night, at most 7 hours if I'm lucky. But because I also work at night, people think I'm lazy for waking up at around 10:30 a.m. Even though I want to sleep well after 4 a.m., idiots. Story 14, question I've been asking my entire night owl life. How is doing laundry or other chores at midnight lazy? I get stuff done. Just on a different schedule than you. Who cares? Story 15, speaking as someone whose everyday life is greatly affected by this, I own a business that operates from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. and am there to close most every day. So my sleep schedule is typically from about 56 m. 1:21 p.m. am busiest on weekends, and my weekend is the slower days, usually Monday through Wednesday. I work around as much as anyone else. I just do so on a vastly different schedule. As smart as humans are, we're still creatures of habit. We tend to want to think of things in terms of how they affect us and how we interact with them. The day starts at around sunrise and starts to wind down around sunset, and we go to sleep when it's late and dark. The week is Monday through Friday, and the weekend is after work school on Friday until Monday morning when we go back to work school. Most of us are used to that idea from childhood all the way to retirement, and that sort of repetition is habit forming. You simply put that into your understanding of how time works, and you subconsciously use that as a metric for everything else, even if you aren't doing it on purpose. As such, when you hear about someone sleeping in, your mind goes to them sleeping extra and not getting up and getting on with whatever responsibilities they may have for the day, but going to bed early is after those responsibilities for the day have already been taken care of. Some of that is for fair reasons. Businesses tend to be open based on the above social expectations. You can't typically go grocery shopping at midnight. I miss 24H Walmart. You can't schedule an appointment with your dentist at 9 p.m. You aren't going to go out for a walk in the park at 3 a.m. But you can do those things at noon, 9 a.m., and 3 p.m. respectively. But some of it is just that expectation and dealing with the rest of the world that lives with it too. I don't blame people for it. It's an extremely hard mental bias to break. I've had people that I've known for years that still ask me if I want to do something at 9 a.m. No, Maria, I would not like to wake up 4 hours early to drive somewhere. People will typically understand when I explain it. But I can't say, oh no, I wake up at 1 p.m. There's always that moment of confusion and a rush of assumptions about me after I say that. I have to explain I work the night shift, even if that's not totally accurate. It's the best way to explain it in one short phrase. It's just the way things go. Story 16, because society has a weird obsession with equating early with productive and late with lazy. Like, if I wake up at 6 a.m. to binge Netflix, I'm a go-getter. But if I stay up till 2 a.m. writing a novel and wake up at 10, I'm a sloth. Honestly, the early bird just got there first and made up all the rules while the night owls were asleep. Story 17, going to bed early for a lot of people requires discipline. Waking up early requires discipline. Going to bed when you want and sleeping till when you don't doesn't require discipline. Story 18's simplest answer is that the assumption of sleeping in is that you went to bed at a normal healthy time and are now choosing to sleep longer. While going to bed early is supposedly about then getting up earlier than you normally would. Story 19, those of us who work at night don't care what other people think. We keep the world moving forward in the dark of night, so it's ready for everyone the following day. Story 20, I think you also need to consider geography and local culture around. I'm in Texas, and in summers if I'm not up by 6 a.m., I'll have to work or drive her around in miserable summers, often leading to other issues later in the week like headache, etc. But then winters come, and you would think you can sleep in, but then the daylight is so less it's easier to work as daylight comes by starting to work when it's dark outside and morning than the other way around. But I was born and raised in India. Most places do not open till 11. Most jobs rarely give Saturday off, but stuff is open late in major cities. Plus, I never did housework. Just called someone else to do stuff. So even if you woke up late and went to bed late, it was easy knowing someone else can take care of it. Plus, the hours are atrocious in India. So any reason to catch up on sleep is good. Story 21, if you go to bed early, you're only cutting into your own time. If you sleep late, you're cutting into time shared with others by obligation. We're a diurnal species. Story 22, people who call me at 8 in the morning get called back at 2 in the morning. Those who call at noon mostly get me on the line, or they call back within the next hour. They stop calling early fairly quickly. They call me because they need me, and I do answer my phone after 12 p.m., just not between 5 and midday. Story 23, early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Maybe the assumption is that people who go to bed early are also going to wake up early. Somewhat because of sayings like the above. Story 24. This was extremely annoying when I was working as a cleaner. Some locations were only available to clean at nighttime, so it wasn't that uncommon to have shifts that lasted just until average folks woke up for the new work day. I'd commute with people going to work, eat something, and maybe go to sleep afterwards. When people heard I'd be going to sleep at that time, so many would call me lazy or have some kind of a weird I wish I had it, as easy as you fantasy of the job. When they heard I'd be getting up at afternoon, a lot of people also systematically assumed I was unemployed and usually that I was an alcoholic too, waking from a night of drinking. Some people didn't even believe when I explained my work hours. Story 25, because the world is run by morning people. I once had a job from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. Everyone told me how lucky I was. Yes, I got to sleep in until 10 a.m., but that's because I got home at 10 p.m. and needed a few hours to unwind and clean up. It ruined my social life because I'd get home at 10 p.m. and couldn't do anything during the week. While they were enjoying their evenings, I was working, but because I got to sleep in, they thought I was lucky. Story 26, because the morning people unfortunately control everything in modern times. I would give literally anything to change this. I could get up at 6 a.m., but I still wouldn't be able to sleep until 2 or 3 a.m. Additionally, I could sleep for 12 hours and still struggle to get out of bed before 12 p.m. My body just rejects the morning person's schedule no matter what. Story 27, we in the U.S. and Canada come from a Calvinist tradition. The original settlers were Calvinists. Calvinism alleges that redemption comes from hard work. Even the work itself is more important than what it produces. The harder you work and the more it sucks and you suffer, the more rewarded you will be in heaven. This led to a culture of the process being considered more important than the product. This is why some bosses are clock watchers, not output watchers. This is why some companies demand return to work when WFH hasn't had any impact on productivity. This is why some bosses are micromanagers. This is why some people think success is stolen if it came easy. This is why some people think they are entitled to promotions merely because they have worked hard, or who think that working harder than everyone else will bring success. Working smarter and better will, not necessarily working harder. A look over at managers even shows posts where people say things like, my most productive employee leaves 5 minutes early. How do I deal with it? If that employee is the most productive, what exactly is the problem? If they make more sales than the rest of the team, who cares if they roll in at 10 and leave at 3? The product matters, not the slog. As such, going to bed early and waking up early is considered more ethical and an indication of a hard worker. Where sleeping in is considered lazy, Calvinism runs deep here. Almost nobody who considers process more important than product is a practicing Calvinist, but they're coming from a place where it's woven into the work ethic. I think part of it is that waking up early requires more discipline. People see waking up early as a difficult thing that is a sign of strong discipline. It's easier to force yourself to stay up than it is to wake up early. But other than that, it is crazy stupid. I can get just as much done at night that you can get done in the morning. And also get more done at night compared to morning. Story 28, because it came from a time where productivity was mostly dictated by available daylight hours. It's why daylight savings is a thing, but the concept stems from farming. Story 29, this is the mirror image of my question. Why is it perfectly acceptable to ask people to stay late for a meeting scheduled by someone who works a later flex schedule, but completely insane to ask people to come in early for a meeting scheduled by early birds? Story 30 ID, say the big reason is when you go to bed early, it's because you've already finished your tasks for the day. Sleeping in late before they're done is increasing the risk they won't get done. Also, just productivity propaganda in our language like early gets the worm. I get where you're coming from, OP. I have mixed feelings. I do tend to think early risers are more productive, but they also tend to be insufferable people. If I'm looking for someone to hang out with, I much prefer people who enjoy a good sleep in. They tend to have more balanced perspective on life. Early risers are the type of who spend their whole lives accumulating and not enjoying and die with a big pile of useless toys, of course. There's a balance to be had in either direction. Story 31, most of society works first shift earlier, rather than later, in their sleep cycle. Consequently, getting up early is associated with go to work, while staying late is associated with party or relaxation. It is a social belief that early birds tend to be more productive and work-oriented, while night owls, except those who actually work at night, are less so. I don't know how accurate this belief is. Story 32, I used to sleep in as much as possible, and then I had kids. If I want any me time, I have to get up at 5,530 before anyone else is up. A man can't even take it without someone rattling the doorknob in my house, saying, "Daddy, daddy, daddy." I wouldn't trade them for the world, but there's zero quiet time during the day. Story 33, my opinion, is that it is important to understand that there is no single right time to sleep. Every person is different, and everyone has their own biological rhythm. If you feel good resting on a certain schedule, then you should not pay attention to stereotypes. Story 34, the context originates from the Bible, specifically in Proverbs, where getting up early leads to getting what you need to survive, but sleeping in leads to poverty. You reap what you sow is the idea. You can't really earn much or learn much while sleeping, but sleeping and rest is definitely valuable and necessary. All of us want to hit that snooze button over and over, maybe just me, and lots of people want to stay awake late into the night to party, to binge watch TV, and then are too sleepy to get up. Of course, it's about the context. The meaning, not all work is done during sunlight hours, but the mentality and the truth is clear to understand. Story 35, if I could get a remote corporate job where I could work the night shift, I'd be so much happier. I'm regularly up late, as it is about 2:30 a.m. as I'm writing this. Story 36, I don't know, man. I sleep really early, going to bed 8, 9 p.m. earlier if I can, and wake up at 4 a.m. But at 7 p.m., I'm already tired as I hate it. I miss a lot of social events and get from my friends all the time. They call me grandma, lazy baby, give me for not being social enough. Even at my job, when I have to stay late, I get from my boss, or when I have to attend night classes and the teachers think less of me because I just can't function at night. Remember that my most productive time is between 4 to 7 in the morning when nothing is happening, not even social events. Night owls, at least, can enjoy night with their friends, can study or work until late with their peers. Maybe I'm having the grass is greener on the other side of the fence mindset, but I would rather be a night owl. Story 37, because here in the USA, if you sleep in late, it's implied that you either don't have a job or you work a job outside of first shift morning shift. And for whatever reason, people are automatically viewed as lazy if they don't have a job and or work later in the day. We're obviously a dumb country, though. Story 38, carry over from the way societies have always been until electricity. You start work when the sun comes up, you stop when it goes down. So someone sleeping until 6 a.m. or later would just be biting into valuable and non-negotiable working hours. Story 39, seriously, because one implies you're being responsible, not staying up to watch TV, play games, drink, etc., whatever it is, and get to sleep, so you get up on time for whatever you're responsible for tomorrow work, getting kids to school, starting to paint the house, whatever. The other is implied to be getting up late because you have something to do and thus are putting it off and being irresponsible. Story 40, that needs to be a cross-stitch pattern and made to be framed in any household with teenagers. Teenagers are the natural night watch, and they do need their sleep. Nothing like shaming a whole cohort of society for a biological mandate. Story 41, because at some point the majority of the population was duped by the minority and shamed for having a normal biorhythm, aka waking up early good, go to bed late bad. In Western culture, you can blame the monks. Explanation: current research show that early birds and night owls are in the minority. However, most people are ambiverts when it comes to sleep rhythms, meaning you're on a spectrum between those two poles. Research further showed that the going to sleep later and waking up later crowd is larger than the going to bed early and waking up early crowd. Although the difference is only slightly above the margin of error, yet statistical significant. Story 42, when I was 18, I worked 60 hours per week. I would go to work around 1 p.m. and stay until 10 midnight, depending on the day. My dad woke up about 5 a.m. and worked until about 3 or 4 each weekday. I worked every day of the week most weeks. He always gave me, because I was asleep when he left in the morning, claimed I wasn't doing anything. Some people just have a twisted mentality that if you aren't going exactly what they're doing, then you're not doing anything. Story 43, as a major insomniac. I get angry when people just tell me to go to bed early. It's literally not possible. I really wish that I could just fall asleep whenever I wanted, but just ends up in laying in bed awake for hours. Story 44, because more often than not, the people staying up late have poor time management. Sure, lots have valid reasons like work, but people's minds tend to jump to a gamer staying up all night or someone bar hopping. Story 45, it's because society loves productivity theater. Waking up early gives the illusion that you've been grinding all day, even if you spent the first 3 hours scrolling your phone. Sleeping in, though, that just looks like you've already wasted the day, even if you're fully rested and more productive than the early birds. Basically, early to bed sounds disciplined, but slept till noon sounds like you missed an imaginary meeting. It's all optics. Story 46, should we all just work 9 to 5 jobs? Obs not. 247 jobs exist for a reason, whether it's healthcare, police, firefighters, EMT, security, hospitality, support, etc., etc., etc. This list just covers a speck of sand on the beach of life. People adjust their sleeping schedules to the role they fulfill. IDC, if you call me lazy for sleeping in, I spend almost every evening taking care of dementia residents in LTC. I work hard AF. It's a complex job. Sorry, not sorry. I don't wake up at the crack of dawn. Story 47-1. Inertia. Going to bed early is seen as overcoming inertia. Sleeping in is seen as giving in to inertia. 2. When people go to bed early, the assumption is that they're doing it so they can wake up early and be productive. Story 48. Some things to note. Older people get tired sooner. Older people tend to live in nicer houses with more natural light. This helps to sync your body with daylight. Story 49. You're more likely to be held accountable for responsibilities in the daytime. If you're sleeping early, you're up earlier to prepare for these responsibilities. If you're sleeping in late, you're procrastinating the responsibilities or avoiding them as a whole. Story 50. I have never really thought about this. As I get older, I'm finding that I naturally wake up earlier, but I am totally using argument the next time someone brags about going to bed early and getting up early. Story 51, going to bed early implies of 6 in. One is tired from a day of slavery. Sleeping in tends to imply that one won't be slaving. Have you ever seen a bucket of crabs? Story 52, because for most of history, jobs were dominated by stuff done in the daytime, like farm and whatnot. Those standards persisted into the schooling and work system we will use today, so the attitude persisted. Story 53, it's a holdover from our days as hunter-gatherers, then farmers. For many thousands of years, humans as a whole were most productive during daylight hours. You can't hunt, gather, or farm at night. Story 54, because people love to judge, label others and parrot what they read listen somewhere, and those who judge don't think. You are not lazy, my friend. You, and everyone judging you, are animals who are programmed to save energy. We should all rethink about the so-called sins. Those outdated concepts only serve to keep people meek and obedient. Working too much is linked to RSI, burnout, high blood pressure, low immunity, and lots of stress. In Japan, a country where people work a lot, they have very high SU1C1 rates. Please rest, relax, and don't feel guilty about it. Story 55 depends on your work schedule, hobbies, and lifestyle. Shift workers are definitely not considered lazy for sleeping in. If your hobbies are more screen-based or can be done at night by lighting art, reading, etc., then you may find yourself to be more productive at night, which leads to a sleep-in. If your work requires waking up early or your hobbies are outdoor-based, then you will naturally want to go to bed earlier to wake up and take advantage of the most sunlight in the day. Story 56, let's be real. People who get up early usually get up and do productive or semi-productive stuff. Staying up late is usually thought of us as sitting up and watching TV or playing video games. Of course, there are exceptions to this, but I can guarantee most people who stay up late are sitting up procrastinating going to bed, and most people who set an alarm early set it with a task in mind to tackle straight off the bat. Story 57, I think it's because morning hours are often used for productive things, like exercising, while evening hours are used for things like watching movies. Story 58, I feel like sleeping in late is the consequence of poor decisions beforehand, whereas going to bed early is more proactive. I say this at 5:30 in the morning, about to go to bed after making incredibly poor decisions all night long. Story 59, going to bed early, is culturally interpreted as planning to get up early. In reality, it could just be that lazily vegging on the couch has left you bored and sleepy. Story 60, staying up late, is often considered lazy because it can lead to waking up late, which might reduce productivity for the day. However, this isn't always true. Some people stay up late, but still manage to wake up early or use their late night hours productively. On the other hand, going to bed early is usually seen as responsible because it aligns with the idea of waking up early, having more energy, and making good use of the day. Ultimately, I think it depends on how someone uses their time, whether late at night or early in the morning. Productivity and discipline matter more than the time someone sleeps or wakes up. Story 61, biologically, if exposed to just natural daylight, your circadian rhythm is going to be more linked to solar cycle. So going to sleep early is going to be more natural. Even night owls will start to go to sleep earlier when exposed to just natural light. So studies have linked people going to sleep late with lack of self-control. So going to sleep late is related to self-control constraint rather than simply being lazy. Basically, people that go to sleep early have better health habits, sleep habits, and self-control constraint. Early birds do better in almost every metric like income, jobs, etc. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was some correlation to being lazy, maybe due to the lack of self-control. Furthermore, we find that after exposure to only natural light, the internal circadian clock synchronizes to solar time such that the beginning of the internal biological night occurs at sunset, and the end of the internal biological night occurs before wake time, just after sunrise. In addition, we find that later chronotypes show larger circadian advances when exposed to only natural light, making the timing of their internal clocks in relation to the light-dark cycle more similar to earlier chronotypes. Constraint was associated with morningness and earlier circadian phase. Story 62, because people assume those who go to bed early get up early and are far more productive. I believe it all comes down to what you do with your waking hours that determines levels of laziness. Story 63, what if I go to sleep early and sleep in? I work long days and have to be on for 13 hours after getting up at 4 a.m. So on weeknights, I'm asleep by 7 or 8. Then on the weekends, I still fall asleep early, but then sleep until 8 or 9. They'll wake up at 4 a.m. for about an hour, but fall right back asleep for a while. Story 64, if that place was at max capacity, would reek IDC how much airflow you have. That is 1,000 plus simultaneous shits, that a distance per capita ratio is off. Story 65, I'm not saying I agree, but I think people see it as going to bed early is a sign of a busy, hard work day, whereas sleeping in is seen as procrastinating the day. Story 66, if you're my wife, it is. She comes in and demands her right to turn on the TV. She sees nothing wrong with entering a room when I go to bed early and doing this. Story 67, going to bed early often means you are taking away from your discretionary time. Usually it means you are not watching as much TV, or not doom scrolling, or not snacking, etc. It's generally considered a positive decision, because getting more sleep is a better use of your time than screwing around. Sleeping in contrast, usually is a sacrifice of getting prepared for your day. Doing more constructive activities like cleaning, exercise, work, school, study, etc. It's generally considered a positive decision because getting those things done is a better use of your time than sleeping extra. Story 68, which do you find easier to do? I could sleep in every day without any effort or discipline. I have consistently been failing to go to bed early for years. Story 69, what's big deal about sleeping? Sleep when you can and want. Who cares? Some days I sleep to 4 p.m., some I am up before 8 a.m. Important thing is that I sleep well. Why would I care about some social norms or people opinion? Will one of them pay my bill or help me when needed? Story 70, hours of operation. If you're interacting with the outside world, there are hours of operation. Getting a head start gives you more time if needed, whereas starting late don't give you wiggle room. Pretty obvious. Story 71, I just tell the sanctimonious asshats regurgitating this. You're welcome. When they look at me askance, I tell them how societies pick the night owls to guard the society at night. Also, if you work on a naval submarine, for example, they run 3 shifts and hot rack. You can't just float the sub without people manning it because some idiot thinks you should get out of bed at 6 a.m. Story 72, funny story about that. I when younger worked a late shift 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. So I'd get home, eat, shower, then get to bed around maybe 1:30 to 2, and my dad has worked construction since I can remember and gets up around 5 every morning. But as in construction, he wouldn't work on rained out days, so when he got back home, or didn't go in, he would call me, usually early LOL, and ask, why are you still asleep? Why are you being so lazy, all while knowing I work late? Story 73, I often work late into the night, but never get to make up the sleep anywhere else. I get it. I think I've trained myself to get by with less. This is probably true for sleep and many other things as well. This is a good thought-provoking question. Thanks for asking it. Story 74, leisure before work versus leisure once the work is done. It's not university true, but getting an early night implies you have the discipline to get your work done first, while laying in implies you do leisure first, which is the hallmark of laziness. Story 75, because it takes discipline to sleep early. Most people stay up late, and back in the day, the best shows were on late at night, LOL. But now we have binge-watchable series, which makes it harder to sleep early, especially if you live with others. It's also not desirable to sleep early versus doing all the fun activities that can happen at night during off-work hours. Not to say that it makes you lazy. You can be productive at night. It's just uncommon for most people. Maybe night owls are rarer. If anyone has research, please share. Story 76, because you're getting rest for the next day. You get up early and work hard during the day, then go to bed early to do it again the next day. If you stay up to midnight and then wake up at 11, you've already lost 4 hours of the workday. Story 77, if you go to bed early, it's so you can get adequate rest for the next day, so you can work hard. Sleeping seems like you are not being productive and wasting away the day. Story 78, this is the most Redditor question ever. Going to bed early takes self-control from most people. It's a sign that they have organized their time well enough that they don't have to borrow time when they should be sleeping. Story 79, I put in 8 hours of work before most people get out of bed, for before the farmers get up. I'm at work already when the first minute of the day happens. But I'm the laziest anyone knows because I'm asleep when you're awake, so sick of shift shaming.